Welcome to the Art Lady channel. Today we're going to be doing a still life of a fall gourd, and we're going to be drawing what we see. And I'm going to give each one of my students a little gourd like this, and then we're going to do a simple outline of the gourd, and then we're going to fill it in with oil pastel. And then we're also going to do a texture to the background and then a texture to the table. So for this lesson, you'll need some texture plates. And if you don't have texture plates, you could always just look around and find texture. Sometimes just pieces of lace or fabric, corduroy. You could even go outside and use the sidewalk as texture. So if you open up your mind and use your imagination, there's texture all over your environment. For the gourd, you could use these, we're using these kind of plastic gourds, but you could even use some regular, real gourds from the supermarket. And if you don't have any gourds, you can just pick any object as your still life. And a still life is just simply something that an artist paints that does not move. The artist generally arranges the item or several items on a table or desk. Sometimes they put a draped cloth and they draw and paint the item. So that's a still life, items that do not move, that artists arrange, that they draw or paint. To start the gourd still life, we're going to go ahead and determine the top of the gourd and the bottom of the gourd, and we're going to determine how big we want that on our page. And here, I used pretty much the whole page for the gourd. The stem came right up to the top, and the bottom almost to the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up a little bit from the bottom, and we're going to put an end line. And then we're going to jump down from the top, make sure you leave plenty of room for the stem, and we're going to put a start line. So I'm jumping down from the top center, putting a line, and it's approximately, if you take your fingers together, it's probably 4 fingers that I went down. And then I'm coming to the bottom here. I'm straight down. I want to jump up a little bit here. Leave room for a table, and do a straight line. These are horizontal lines. These are my guidelines. So this is how big I know I want my gourd to be. Now we're going to look at the gourd, and we're going to draw what we see. So I'm going to take my eye, and I first start at the top here of the gourd. I'm going to bring it in closer so you can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to be explaining this step by step the way that my eye moves, so you can learn the process of draw what you see. And it's not what you think, because when you look at the gourd shape, you may say, oh, this is a big oval that's a little bit wider at the bottom. And so you would just draw a big oval. But drawing what you see is actually having your eye trace the edge of an object. So my eye would start here. I would come across, and then my eye comes down and around the object slowly. So I want to draw what I see. So let's take the first part. We're going to come across the gourd for the top, and then my eye sees it slightly curving as it reaches the edge here. So I slightly curve my line on my paper. So I'm matching what I see. I'm taking the outline of the object. Then it comes down diagonally, and it's almost halfway diagonal before it starts rounding and getting a little bit wider. So my pencil is going to come down diagonally down, almost halfway between the 2 points. And then it kind of flares out. So it kind of flares out a little bit and then rounds to the bottom. So I'm going to come out a little bit more and round to the bottom. And do this carefully. Here it is, rounding to the bottom. See how it almost makes a circular shape down here. The way this comes out a little bit and rounds. Now we're going to go to the other side. I'm going to make this a little bit darker so you can see it. Now my other side, whoops, it comes down. The gourd is a little bit bigger if you notice on this side. Let's see if you can see that. See how it's a little bit more space there from the stem. So draw what you see. So this is less, so it almost curves right from that area here. So it starts curving right away. And this comes down diagonal to about halfway like it did before. And then this flares out here. This is not much of, on this side, it doesn't show much of a round curve. Notice how this just bulges out real round right here. This side is more flat. So draw what you see, not what you think. So we come down diagonal, and instead of making this the same on both sides, because my gourd's not the same on both sides, I'm just coming out a little bit on this side and rounding right to the bottom. This side was almost completely diagonal, coming down. So this is kind of lopsided a little bit. It's not the same, it's not balanced. So there's the gourd shape. Now we're going to do the stem. Draw what you see. And I'm looking here at the stem as it comes up, and it's a diagonal line right here. So on this side, I'm going to come up diagonal. And on this side of the gourd, and I'm talking about right in here, it has just a little bit of a bump, and it comes up diagonal. So my eye is going to trace this. It's going to come up, diagonal, and then it's going to come up again and swerve around. So I do it a little bit at a time as my eye's tracing. So on the paper here, I'm going to come up, bump around, so curve around. Then I'm going to come up slightly diagonal, and then I'm going to curve around right here. It ends straight. Let's fix this little space here. So it bumps up to there. Then my line comes straight down here. And then it curves, it goes right back straight in. And then I do a slight curve here. It's almost a C curve, partial. And then this comes out, flares out and around to meet this side. Flares out. My diagonal isn't quite that big, out to here, there. So let's fix that. So here is this shape of that stem. Now in the stem, I do have some ridges here. I've got a ridge here, which is a line, and then there's a ridge here that comes up and over. Up, right up to the top here, and twists over. And then there's a ridge here. They're like texture in the stem. Now let's put the table on here. So we're going to do a horizontal line, and this can be anywhere you want. If you want more wallpaper or pattern, in your background, you can have it lower. If you want more table pattern, you can have this higher. So that's up to you how you want to divide your table. Just start off with a point on your gourd and come across horizontally, and it's parallel, which means equal distance from the edge of your page. And I'm going to continue on this side parallel, coming across the page, straight across, parallel. Okay, so then now that we have our gourd drawn and we drew what we actually see, we're going to now match the colors and color in the gourd. I'm going to start off with some of this light yellow texture. So I'm just going to take my oil pastel and I'm going to add just very lightly, I'm going to color in my gourd because it's underneath the green here. I'm going to go around my edges and I'm just going to lightly color in. And the paper that we're using here is manila paper, and I really like the manila. You could even use any kind of construction paper as well. Those are my favorite kinds of papers to use with students when we're using oil pastels or crayons. I'm just finishing up coloring in just a light base coat of yellow. And then I'll be able to layer my oil pastels on here. Now I'm going to push a little bit harder where I see the actual yellow stripes on the gourd. So I'm going to put some yellow, darker yellow in here and one in here. And again, draw what you see. So my yellow stripe comes from the stem and it almost comes down the center. And you'll be able to see this a little bit better once I start adding my darker green values to this. So now I'm going to start putting in my green areas of color. And again, draw what you see. So I'm going to draw around this shape here, which is a long, narrow, it looks like a little stripe. It has a little bend to it, and it's pointy. So again, draw what you see. See what that shape looks like. And then I'm going to lightly color in here. And I'm going to start light. I'm just doing this very lightly. I see a little bit of yellow stripe on the edge here. So I'm going to draw in my stripes now. And I'm going to work light to harder pressure. I'm going to add the stripe here, comes off of this and swoops around. It has a slight curve at the bottom here. So I'm putting in this curve and then I'm coloring in lightly the green. And it's slowly blending in with my yellow. And then I'm going to do this curve here. It's a slight curve. It has a point to it. And then the rest of this is green. So I'm just lightly coloring in the rest green. And I haven't quite blended lots of this yet. I'm just laying my colors kind of softly on top of each other, not pushing really hard with the oil pastel. Once you have that real thick layer of oil pastel, you can't, sometimes it's hard to have it accept any other color. So I'm working it up lightly. I also want, if you look closely, there's a lot of texture, little dots of yellow all over this. So I want to keep some of this. You can see how the oil pastel has lightly just made it itself, this texture, where you can see the yellow through. That's why I gave a base coat first of yellow underneath, an undercoating. So now I'm just going to come back with some of my original yellow, and I'm just going to go back on top and blend in any areas that are solid green, like down in here and down in here. And this will give it a little bit of a solid color. Now I'm going to start looking with my eyes, and I want to look for the darkest color on my gourd. I'm going to just finish blending some of this area in here. So I want to find where I see my darkest colors. So I'm looking closely, and I do see a lot of dark at the top here. And then on this side, there's a lot of darker color green. The lighter tends to be here. I've got some dark here and on this side. So now with my darker value green, I'm going to go right underneath the stem of the gourd, and then I'm going to come down the side lightly, and then in this area a little bit with my dark. Sometimes if you can't really see the difference in the colors of green, if you squint your eyes, that helps you see the darker shadow. I see a little bit of dark right in here too. So now I'm just adding my dark values. So I have my darks. There's a little bit of dark around here too. And I'm going to put some dark on the bottom. And then I'm going to bring back my little bit lighter green on this side. Now I'm going to work up my stem. And the stem has some darker, it's made up of a lot of darker green, a little bit of tan, but it's quite much darker. So I'm going to start with this fairly darker color and just give a light base coat. Then I'm going to go ahead and work up some of this tan color that I see near the ridges. Just lightly blending in. And then I'm taking a white color and drawing up some of the highlights here. And then I'm taking the darkest color. I'm going to do a really dark brown to draw in right in here where it meets. There's a dark area. There's a dark area here. And then I'm going in my ridges. I'm going to draw those in with the dark. And it has a ridge that twists up this way. And then with my very dark, I'll add just a little bit here where it's real dark, and a little bit at the bottom. It's going to form a little shadow when it meets the table. So there, right now, is my gourd. I do see a shiny highlight right in here, so we can add that if you want to. A little bit brighter right in here. So I'm just using this white as a blending tool. It's where the roundest part catches the light. And just keep on checking and looking and seeing where you need to add a little bit more color. If you take each section, this gets a little bit darker in yellow even down at the bottom. Now we're ready for our background. And I'm going to go ahead and do the table. I'm going to start my rubbing on the tablecloth first, but before I do that, I'm going to just give a very light layer of background color in an oil pastel, just extremely light, and then I will do my crayon rubbing on top. This will just give some other underlying color and values, and this is not applying much pressure, just very light. And it's just done very quickly. You can see how fast I'm doing this. It doesn't have to be perfectly evenly colored. Now I'm going to place my rubbing plate and I'm going to place it under my paper. So the best texture is up. And I'm going to be holding my paper and the rubbing plate. And then I place the crayon flat on the paper. So I'm holding the rubbing plate with one hand and the paper, and then this is flat on the paper, and then I just do it pressing really hard. I'm coming across. You don't want your paper or the plate, rubbing plate, to move. And I'm just coming right across that. And then I carefully do the underside. Now I can move my plate to this side, and I can go ahead and rub this side. And I'm using a lot of pressure pushing down. And this is from an optical illusion series of rubbing plates. Now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and do my rubbing plate for the background up here, which is going to be like that wallpaper. I love that rubbing plate. This is a Frisker's rubbing plate, and these are real heavy and sturdy. These seem to work well with children because they're so hard. They're real sturdy. So I place my rubbing plate on one half side. I'm holding my paper and the rubbing plate, and my crayon goes on the side, and I'm just pushing really hard. And I'm going carefully around my gourd as I meet my gourd. And with this, I'm kind of pushing in a circular motion here to get all of that color from that rubbing on that rubbing plate to put so that the designs appear. And I'm pushing hard in a circular motion so that pattern picks up nicely. And now we do the same here on this side. I'm going to do a close-up so you can see close-up what's happening. Just very carefully. And near the edges, if you want to lift up the crayon a little bit, I'm slightly angling it up. That way I can get into my edges. And there is the final rubbing and final results of the picture. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and be sure to hit the like button. And if you have not already subscribed, don't forget to subscribe. And for those that are part of my Patreon account, I want to give a big shout out to those patrons who support this channel. And if you would like to support this channel, go ahead and click the title of the video, and it will take you to a link to my Patreon account.